I was sitting in my car outside the courthouse on the day my divorce was being finalized, and I could not make myself go in. The hearing was at 10 o'clock. It was 9:43. My attorney had called twice. I had watched people walk through those glass doors. Lawyers with briefcases, people in suits, a woman with two children who held her hands very tightly. And I had told myself each time, after the next person. Go in after the next person. I had been telling myself that for 31 minutes. My hands were on the steering wheel, even though the car was off. The engine had been off for 40 minutes. I was in my good coat, the gray one I bought for job interviews and other things that require you to look like someone who has things under control. My mascara had been reapplied twice already and was not going to survive another round. The marriage had been 11 years. Not a bad marriage. I want to be clear about that, because the worst part about a marriage that ends without being a bad marriage is that there is no clean story to tell. He was not a bad man. We had simply become two people who had grown in different directions for long enough that there was more distance between us than either of us knew how to cross. We had tried. We had tried for 3 years before we stopped trying. And now I was in a parking lot in a good coat with reapplied mascara, and I could not make myself walk through those glass doors and end it officially. Because officially felt permanent in a way that the last 3 years of trying had not. I was not crying at that moment. I had cried in the car on the way there. I had cried in the parking lot when I first arrived. I had run out of tears and moved into something beyond tears, a specific dry emptiness, a suspension, like a held breath that does not know yet whether it is going to be released or held forever. The passenger door opened. I looked over. A woman I had never seen in my life was sitting down in my passenger seat. She was maybe 65, with gray hair cut short and a sensible coat and reading glasses pushed up on her head. She had a paper coffee cup in each hand. She set one in my cup holder without asking. She said, "I saw you from across the parking lot. You looked like you needed someone to sit with you. I hope that's okay." I said, "I'm sorry?" She said, "I'm Carol. I was just leaving from something in there and I saw you sitting here and—" She paused. She said, "I know what it looks like when someone can't go in. I've been that person. I thought maybe it would help to not be alone for a minute." I looked at her. She was not alarmed by my expression. She was not nervous about being in a stranger's car. She was simply sitting there with a cup of coffee, looking straight ahead at the courthouse, completely calm. I said, "I don't know you." She said, "No. That might actually be why this works." I did not tell her to leave. Something about the matter-of-fact way she sat there, not performing concern, not angling for a story, just present, made the idea of asking her to leave feel more exhausting than letting her stay. So she stayed. We sat in that car for 47 minutes. I know the exact time because I watched the clock. 9:43 to 10:30. My hearing had been at 10. I had missed it. My attorney would be furious. I would need to reschedule. None of that felt important enough to move for. She did not ask me what was happening inside the courthouse. She did not ask why I was crying. I had started again, quietly, without intending to, somewhere around the 10-minute mark. She did not offer advice or perspective or the name of a therapist. She sat in my passenger seat and drank her coffee and occasionally said small things, the way you say small things when what you really want to say is, "I am here and you are not alone." She said, "The light is different in November, isn't it? Like it can't decide." She said, "I like your coat." She said, "This parking lot has terrible drainage. Look at that puddle." At some point, I started talking, not about the divorce. I never said the word divorce, not once in those 47 minutes. I talked about other things. The drive over, which had taken longer than expected because of construction on the interstate. The coffee, which was better than I expected from whatever place she'd gotten it. A dog I'd seen on the sidewalk outside my building that morning. A very large golden retriever wearing a small hat, which had made me almost laugh for the first time in several days. She listened to all of it with the same steady attention. Around the 40-minute mark, I said, "I should probably go in." She said, "Probably." I said, "I don't know why I can't." She said, "You know why. You just need a little more time to be okay with the knowing." I looked at her. She was looking straight ahead at the courthouse. I said, "How long did it take you?" She said, "Longer than it should have, but I got there." I said, "How?" She thought for a moment. Then she said, "Someone sat with me, in a parking lot not so different from this one." I didn't know her either. I don't think it matters whether you know someone. I think sometimes a stranger is exactly the right person because a stranger doesn't need you to be okay. They just need you to be here. At 10:30, I picked up my phone and called my attorney. I told her I had been delayed and needed to reschedule. She was not furious, actually. She was professional and efficient and found a new date without comment, which was its own small mercy. I put my phone down. I said, "I'm going to go in and reschedule something, and then I'm going to go home and probably sleep for 12 hours. She said, "That sounds right." I opened my door. Then I looked back at her. I said, "Can I ask you something?" She said, "Of course." I said, "Why did you stop?" She looked at me for a moment with an expression I did not entirely understand then, and understand better now. She said, "Because 22 years ago someone stopped for me, and I promised myself that if I ever saw someone sitting in a parking lot looking the way I looked that day, I would stop. That's all. It's not complicated." She got out of the car. She gave me a small nod. Not a wave, not a hug, just an acknowledgement, one person to another. "I see you." And she walked across the parking lot toward a white sedan near the exit. I went inside. I rescheduled the hearing. I drove home. I slept for 11 hours. The divorce was finalized 3 weeks later on a Tuesday morning. I went in at 9:58, 2 minutes before the hearing. My attorney met me outside, and we went through those glass doors together, and it took 22 minutes, and then it was done, and I walked back to my car in the parking lot, and I sat there for exactly 4 minutes, and then I drove away. I did not fall apart in that parking lot the second time. I have thought about why. Partly it was that the thing I had been dreading had happened and was survivable, which is often how dread works. The anticipation is the worst part, not the event. But partly it was Carol. Partly it was 47 minutes in a car with a stranger who did not need me to be okay, and who reminded me, without saying it directly, that the thing I was going through had been survived by other people. That parking lots like this one existed all over the country, and people sat in them and eventually went in, and eventually drove away, and eventually slept, and eventually, incrementally, were all right. I looked for her after. Not obsessively. I didn't have a name beyond Carol. I didn't have a license plate. I didn't have anything except the memory of short gray hair and reading glasses and a paper cup of coffee and the specific steadiness of someone who had decided to stop. I asked the courthouse if they had any record of a Carol in that morning's cases. They did not. I went back to that parking lot twice in the weeks that followed and sat in the same spot and looked around, which I understood even while doing it was not a reasonable approach to finding someone. I never found her. 11 years have passed, and I have never found her. What I did instead was carry her. The way you carry something that doesn't have a name yet. Not grief, not quite gratitude, something between the two. A specific awareness. When I am in parking lots or waiting rooms or any of the other places where people sit alone with things they cannot yet carry into the building, that the person in the next car might be where she was 22 years ago and where I was 11 years ago. I have stopped 3 times, not often. Twice in the years immediately after, once more recently. Each time it was a woman sitting alone in a car with the particular stillness that I recognized. The held breath stillness, the can't go in stillness. Each time I approached carefully, with coffee if there was a coffee cart nearby, and without it if there wasn't. And I said a version of what she said to me. I saw you from across the lot. You looked like you might need someone to sit with you for a minute. I hope that's okay. 2 of the 3 times, the woman let me stay. Last Tuesday, I was back at that courthouse for the first time in years. Not for anything difficult. My daughter had passed the bar exam, and her swearing-in ceremony was in the building where my marriage had once officially ended. I had driven past that parking lot hundreds of times since that November morning and never gone back to it. And now here I was, pulling into the same spot, in a different kind of good coat. I was early. I sat in the car for a few minutes, the way you sit in cars, before something you've been looking forward to. Just absorbing the anticipation. And across the parking lot, in a spot near the far entrance, was a woman sitting alone in her car. The same stillness, the same held breath quality. The same coat worn for something that required looking like a person who has things under control. I sat there for a moment, then I got out of my car. There was no coffee cart. I went empty-handed. I walked across the parking lot, and I stood at her passenger window, and I waited until she noticed me. And when she looked up, I made the small gesture that means roll down the window. And she did. And I said, I'm sorry to interrupt, you looked like you might need someone to sit with you for a minute. She looked at me. The expression on her face was the expression that I imagine was on mine 11 years ago. Part confusion, part something that had not yet decided if it was relief. She said, I have a hearing in 20 minutes. I said, I know, I'll leave when you're ready. She unlocked the doors. I got in. I don't know her name. I don't know what the hearing was. I didn't ask. We sat together for 18 minutes, and I said small things, and she said small things, and at the end, she said, I think I can go in now. I said, I think so too. She went in. I went in too, to the other side of the building, to watch my daughter raise her right hand and become an attorney in the courthouse, where I once couldn't make myself go through the glass doors. The woman I sat with last Tuesday does not know my name. I do not know hers. I don't know if she found what she needed inside that building, or if it went the way she hoped, or if she cried in the car afterward. But she went in. That is all any of us can do. Go in when we're ready. And if we're lucky, have someone in the passenger seat who doesn't need us to be okay. Just here. Just yet.